Hello, everyone. Today is September 11, 2021, and the Tucson Astrologers Guild is proud to present Madalyn Hillis-Dineen speaking about parans and crossings. I will now turn the mic over to our well-known member, Susie Cox, to introduce our speaker.
I'm just honored to introduce Madalyn. Madalyn and I have known each other since the early 80s, and she started a study of astrology in '79 with Uranian astrology, which she teaches at Kepler College along with Astro Cartography, and she's the vice president of sales and marketing at Astrolabe. And I sold a software for Astrolabe. So I flew back there in the early 80s and learned about their software from her. And at the time, Rob Hand and of course, Gary Christian. So I consider myself a friend with Madalyn. We've traveled all over speaking at conferences. And by the way, she's got the best husband in the world. They're just a wonderful team. Say hi to Doug for me. So here's Madalyn. Yay!
Thank you, Susie. And
you're welcome.
You are a part of our family for sure.
I am. It's true.
and Doug is a wonderful. He's like the wind beneath my wings.
He's amazing. He's amazing. You lucked out on that one, dear.
I did luck out after.
Yeah, say hi to him for me.
After not being so lucky for a long time. Hey, we get to celebrate a 25th anniversary this year, if you can believe that.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway,
I'll mute myself now.
So I'm going to start to share my screen and hit share. There we go. And I'm going to start up my slideshow. So I think if I can still see you guys on the right, but I don't think I can see the chat. And so if somebody sort of like maybe Tom or Susie or Gail monitors the chat, and but that way at least it's just one person. Because
I will, Matt. I will ask when you're ready for a question. I'll pull it out of the chat for you, Madalyn.
Okay, that would be great. All right, so today we're going to talk about parans and crossings. And what exactly is a paran line? So this is from Rob Hand's Essays on Astrology. The word paran comes from the Greek word paran, which means rising together. He defines parans as simultaneous transits over two or more bodies over the horizon or meridian circles of a given place at the same time. Note that parans are always done in mundo. So, basically what that means is simultaneous angularity. This is really not this is not a modern idea. This is how our astrology forebears, ancestors, did their work. Oh, Venus is going to rise while Sirius is on the midheaven, or this is how they did astrology. That was about it was their basic tool. Parans are latitude specific, and we'll go through that a little bit more closely. And I say you can use a degree or a 2-degree orb, which is about 120 miles north or south of the latitude. Most parans may be identified on the maps as line crossings. So when you're looking at an astrocartography map, you might see intersections, and those are crossings. But what we'll go through this, and then I have to say, well, I'll show it in a minute. So the types of paran lines. So you can have two bodies rising together, or one rises while the other sets. One rises while the other culminates or anti-culminates. Two bodies set together. One sets and the other culminates or anti-culminates. Two bodies culminate or anti-culminate together. That one sounds sexy to me. And then one culminates while the other anti-culminates. And this is the those two where they're either culminating or one culminates and the other anti-culminates. Those are not latitude specific, and that's an exception to the rule that we're going to discuss. So this is an astrocartography map. I modified it so it's only showing Saturn and Neptune. Don't ask me why. I must have been in a bad mood or something. But we can see that right here, Saturn rising is crossing the Neptune IC line. So, and then take a look, because it's going kind of right through Sofia, Rome, Beijing. It's pretty close. And that's at, one point during the day, on the day I did this, October 24th, 2014. As the Earth rotates on its axis over the course of the day, that particular combination will occur at every single degree of longitude, but at always the same latitude. And that's because the Earth is rotating on its axis. And so if we move ahead a little in time, we can see that same crossing, Saturn, Neptune. This time it's going through New York, but you can see that that latitude line has not changed. We see Sofia, Rome, which are our markers, and then, oh, the time is right here. Now it's 9:15 a.m. All right, so there, and then the same thing later in the day, 8:15 p.m. Saturn rises, Neptune crosses. This time they're crossing right there, just a little north of Beijing, but we can see the line is still in that latitude line is still in the same place, New York, Rome, and Sofia. And so that is why, so the theory is, regardless of where you are on the planet, your that entire latitude, so any crossing that you might have, that entire latitude becomes sensitized to the planetary influences that the crossings represent. So at that point, I would ask if anybody has a question about that, or is that all pretty clear and understood? Are there any questions in the chat?
I haven't seen any questions yet. Thank you.
Okay, great. So
I can't see the chat. Oh,
well, neither could I. As long as you can see the maps.
can you hear me now?
Can you see the PowerPoints?
I could, but I changed it to see the chat. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay, so the question is, so that means then that influence is always there 24 hours a day, really kind of at the same level of strength. Is that right? Or is it just like for a few minutes every day?
Well, it's only for a few minutes every day at a particular longitude, but it's the same latitude throughout the entire day. So whatever crossings, so not all, because here not all crossings are possible for all people. I've done charts where people just don't, have any real good crossings in livable latitudes. And then, so not all crossings are going to be possible, right? So whichever ones are possible on a particular day, yes, that influence will last for the whole day. And so if we're talking about a natal chart, you're born with certain crossings that were, like I said, possible. And yes, the entire latitude, like for your whole life, is sensitized to whatever those planets are.
Can I just suggest it, if you can't see the chat, by moving your cursor over the bottom of the screen, you'll see the button that invites you to click on it that says chat. Thank you, Madalyn.
Okay, so so parans of the sun. So we're so now we heard in the we reviewed, what Rob said about parans, right? Some can be the sun is at the midheaven while something else is rising or setting, and all those different combinations. Those are all going to influence the energy of the paran to some extent. So, a sun Saturn where the Saturn is at the midheaven and sun is rising might behave very differently than a sun Saturn where the Saturn is setting and, the sun is on the IC or something. So, always keep that in mind in the interpretations. And a lot of people also believe that, because the moon will move a little bit more rapidly than these other planets, that we should not really pay too much attention to moon parans. I tend to disagree with that. I mean, you're born at that particular time, and so I still use parans that are connected to the moon, and I have an example in here later. So a sun moon paran is a nice paran to be on, because that combination lends itself to new beginnings, like just the way a sun moon conjunction might. And it's really important for you to kind of focus on your image and your feelings, and you can even maybe adopt a new sort of image here. It's in all sun lines, or generally speaking. I really hate to generalize, because a person that's got a sun squaring Saturn conjunct Neptune and opposing Pluto. I don't know if there is such a person, but you know what I'm saying. That sun is a lot different than, maybe a person with, a Sun-Venus conjunction that's not, not debilitated in any way, right? So, but in general, sun lines are always about self-expression, self-esteem, being able to, shine in some way. And so with the moon, it's the blending of that energy, right? The sun and the moon. Sun Mercury, and, for obvious, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, you can't have the sun on the midheaven while Mercury is setting, and you can't. I mean, I think that that's what I was saying, is like not all combinations are possible. But somebody with the Sun and Mercury rising together would be a great or a location where Sun and Mercury rising together will be a great place where you can communicate, writing, sales, study, intellectual stimulation, and maybe even receive recognition because of the Sun for your work and your skills, your mercurial skills. Sun Venus, the same thing sort of applies as with Mercury. Not all combinations are possible. The energy here is such that you are gentle and charming, and you may develop an appreciation of the arts. Personal relationships are go well, and you have a just a charming, wonderful persona to put forth. Now, Sun Mars is, that's one that could be, somewhat positive and somewhat negative, right? Because it's great for energy, it's great for vitality if you're involved in sports or anything where competition is involved. This is a good crossing. The downside is that you can bring a little too, you could act a little too impulsively, or you could take risks that could be dangerous. You could if you're not used to expressing your anger, your assertion, if you're not used to asserting yourself, and then you find yourself on one of these lines, you might find yourself dealing with these repressed anger issues. Sun Jupiter is a lovely line because there's a lot of optimism and enthusiasm, and you can express yourself in larger than life ways. And of course, it favors things like travel and study and teaching and religion, publishing, all those wonderful Jupiterian things. You may be the beneficiary of a lot of luck and support of other people. And of course, always the danger with Jupiter, where you become arrogant or take on too much, and those kinds of things. So we have to watch out for that. Sun Saturn. Under the influence of Sun and Saturn, you can be more responsible and serious and reliable. Work and career become important. Self-discipline becomes important. And you might deal with any father issues that you may have along this line, or have kind of experiences that cause you to look at that type of thing, how you deal with authority, how you deal with people who are in responsible positions, and how you yourself accept responsibility. Personally, I have come to really like Saturn. I went through a period of a lot of Saturn transits. the way my chart is set up. I get, you know, rapid succession. And I just started using the mantra, Saturn is my friend. And in Martin Schulman's books, I forget which one it is exactly, but he talks about Saturn, that until we make peace with Saturn and learn to accept, I'll call it life on life's terms, all of the three planets beyond Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, can never be fully expressed. So if you have a firm foundation with Saturn, then you're free. It frees you to innovate with Uranus, dream and inspire with Neptune, and, you know, transform with Pluto. And I believe that. I believe that Saturn is my friend. Anyway, Sun, Uranus, and you would too if you had it squaring everything in your chart like I do, or almost everything. Anyway, so Sun, Uranus. Here you are able to express your individual self. So you know, one of the places where we talk about the authentic self, Uranus lines are very much that. I mean, they can be disruptive, and so can this crossing. You know, a little bit like, you know, living life on a roller coaster, but you know, they're also places where we can really be, you know, who we are. Originality, right? Creativity. And as long as, you know, it's not all about rebellion and willfulness. So, and obviously a pretty good place for an astrologer, because you know, we do pretty well with Uranus. Sun, Neptune is again a combination about you know, imagination, a creative channel, or a place where we escape from reality. No, escaping from reality, you know, every day by drinking or drugging, or you know, just not being present and living in, you know, the world as we would wish it to be, isn't exactly great. But sometimes, you know, an escape from reality can be, you know, regenerating in a way. You know, we can all take, that's what a vacation is, right? An escape from reality. And, you know, we go off and, you know, to a cabin in the woods, or, you know, a beautiful beach, and just relax for a while. So, you know, that's a Sun Neptune crossing may not be a bad place to take a relaxing vacation, or to go to you know, a meditative retreat, or spiritual retreat of some type. So there are good things that we can do with these, and there's also, and if you find yourself, I mean, sometimes people really don't have a whole lot of choice about where they're living. I mean, I guess you know, you sort of do, but for most of us, you know, we kind of lock in, right? We lock in that reality. So if and I've had clients too that, you know, I'm of an age where women, you know, a lot of us did our own thing, but there are still some, or people a little bit older than I am, right, who their husband gets transferred to Italy. They're going to go to Italy with their husband. You know, they're not going to stay and say, well, you know, some will, some people, you know, do the you know, the commute thing, right? Long distance relationship. But most of us will go where the money is, you know, the good job or the security or family or whatever. And if you have to go to one of those places, right, you need to find, you know, creative and ways of sort of mitigating the sun Neptune or the sun Uranus or whatever. This is you know, meditation and spiritual pursuits, artistic pursuits are always good on Sun Neptune crossing. Sun Pluto, so as you would imagine, this line can be pretty intense and maybe even a little obsessive, right? And with Pluto, we often have to deal with power, you know, coming into our own power in a way. Well, you know, it isn't really about crossings, but while I was in the midst of a Pluto transit and there were some unhappy things happening on the NCGR board, and I was a newly elected chair, and there were a lot of challenges that I had to face with the Pluto. And then I was invited to talk in Istanbul, Turkey. And I noticed that I don't remember if it was what it was, but it was a Mars line, some Mars line going through Istanbul while Pluto was transiting. And I was sort of like, oh my God. But what really happened was the chapter there had me give out their diplomas. And, you know, I sort of came into, you know, feeling like, oh yeah, you know, my own power, you know, it was very helpful for me to take that trip, even though I had a lot of trepidation. And the wonderful husband that everybody's been talking about, you know, all this time, didn't want to come with me because there had just been bombings in London, and he said, and I was going to London first and York and then going to Istanbul, and he said, no, you know, I don't want to go. That's okay, you go. Just take cabs everywhere. I said, okay. And then I saw what the price of a cab is in London, and that sort of ended pretty quickly. And I found myself using the metro and only cabs late at night. But anyway, but with Pluto, we you know, we eventually deal with power on some level. And if you're abusing your power, this is going to be, you know, a place where you might, you know, sort of have issues. But if you are using your power constructively, it is a place where you can kind of make, you know, grow and, you know, really understand yourself. Moon, Mercury. So now we're on to the moon, Parans. So this is just to help me keep my place. Here we are intuitive and imaginative, as you may expect, and you will find that the energy, you get very attached emotionally to what you're saying and feeling. And you know, I've had experiences on moon lines where, you know, I really take things personally. You know, not necessarily the crossing, but I have a moon line that goes through Florida, and I do have family in Florida, and, you know, actually my son lives there now, and my granddaughter is there. But I went to a conference. It was an AFA conference, and you had two ways to pay. You could pay by how much software you sold or what you sold and pay a percentage, or you could just pay a flat rate. And because it was a UAC year, we were concerned that it was going to be a quiet AFA conference because it was just like 2 months later. And so we decided to go by what we were going to sell. And I get there, and it's this huge room with so much space, and my table was behind a pole, and I didn't I didn't take to that too well. And so I sort of this was, you know, quite a while ago now. I think like 1998 maybe, or something like that, like a long time ago. And so I was, you know, I was just a little upset, and I'll never forget. And I, you know, and I got moved. I was heard, and, you know, to everyone's benefit. But what was her name? Sophia Mason. Sophia Mason's husband came up to my husband and said, "Oh my God, it's a good thing your wife didn't have an axe, because I think she would have chopped that pole right down." And yeah, I would, you know, and I took it personally, right? It was a moon line, and even though it, you know, it wasn't meant to be personal, you know, I got emotional about this business thing, you know. Today I might say, oh good, I'm behind a pole, nobody will see me and they won't come bother me and ask me too many questions, and I can relax. But anyway, Moon Venus, you know, is a wonderful line for love, for emotional connections, but you know, and also being sensitive to other people. So it's not necessarily a place though where you're going to make clear rational decisions, but it is, you know, it is a lovely energy. Moon Mars, and I just described what Moon Mars could be like for sure, is an impulsive and emotional person, a reactive person, right? And you act without, you know, weighing the consequences perhaps, or you know, just being temperamental and have difficulty controlling emotions. And Moon Jupiter tends to, you know, a generous and expansive nature, you know, optimism, you know, lots of public interaction with women. The other thing always though, with Jupiter is to, you know, you might tend to overeat, right? You know, Moon being the nurturing and Jupiter being abundance. And that kind of thing. Moon Saturn. So this can be a difficult energy. And this is one of the ones that I pretty much always want to avoid when I'm trying to choose a place for somebody, because it's a solitary energy. And you know, a lot of the people come to me, every once in a while I get the one that I want to go, you know, hide in the woods and write a book and get away from it all. Yeah, Moon Saturn's good for them. But you know, more often than not, people want more interaction, you know, and a better life. And this is one of the crossings that I would tend to avoid, because it is, you know how it is when transiting moon hits your Saturn, right? Once a month, or well, 4 times a month by hard aspect. Take notice. It's a quiet time. You might feel sleepy. You don't want to do anything. You just, and so emphasizing that. Again, unless it's, somebody that really needs that alone time to process something or to work on something. Otherwise, you can feel very isolated under that influence. Moon Uranus can be a lot of fun, unconventional, and if you're in a rut, and that's another thing that about Uranus lines in astrocartography. If you want to break free of whatever, that's a good place. Whether you stay there for a long time, that's another story. But this is a, again, a good influence for creativity, being inventive, independent, and breaking free of a rut. Moon Neptune is really dreamy and what's the word I'm looking for? Receptive to and sensitive to what's happening, maybe too sensitive, too absorbing the energies around you. And again, it's like with Neptune, reality is a slippery notion. Again, creating music, meditation, any of those things are favored along those lines. Moon Pluto, and another thing I've found with Pluto in life, and there's often a triangular situation, and not necessarily a love triangle, but mother, father, child. I even had 2 women that had come to me separately, but they were working on writing a book together. And they, this wasn't about astrocartography, but they were both having Pluto transits. And the third element, was the book, and the power struggle over the book, and who's, I don't know how you write a book with somebody unless you're just, perfectly in tune with each other. But anyway, so Moon Pluto, yeah, so, of course, intense emotional relationships and entanglements, and that sort of thing. If you can, pour that energy into something creative, or, get together with people who are trying to change something. The first thing that came into my mind, because this past September 1st, we had in most of the towns here on the Cape, a plastic water bottle ban. So they're not allowed to sell water in a plastic bottle under 1 gallon. So those individual plastic bottles. Sustainable Practices was a little group started by a friend of mine, and she's definitely a Moon Pluto type of person, or Plutonian anyway. And but a small group banding together to transform something, can happen. And it was kind of like, against all odds that she got the commercial sale of water in bottles ended here on the Cape. But of course, we have an ocean we want to protect, and a seashore. So I don't know. I don't know if that sort of thing is happening in other places where, um, plastic has become an issue, but I'm very conscious of it now. I wasn't always, but, I'm certainly conscious of the plastic that I use. And, I started using cloth napkins at home instead of paper, and, just trying to be a little bit more conscious. And, um, so that's a good kind of Moon Pluto sort of energy. Mercury, Venus, again, self-expression. Not likely one is going to be on the midheaven while the other one is setting. I guess that is sort of possible, but more often than not, these are conjunctions. And of course, so the crossing is the crossing is happening, and so the self-expression is important. One other thing that I forgot to mention, but just to understand in astrocartography, that what we're looking at is the actual bodily rising and setting, as opposed to the zodiacal position. So often, like Pluto, and any other planet that might have significant latitude, which means north or south of the ecliptic, will often not appear where you might think they would appear. So, for instance, my son, my SON son, has Pluto a couple of degrees off the ascendant in his birth chart. And when I relocate his chart to Cape Cod, Pluto is exactly on the ascendant here. And one of the first things that happened when we moved here is he had a cerebral aneurysm. Well, he's got a Mercury-Pluto opposition. So Mercury in Aries, the head, Pluto in Libra. And, and I knew that stuff became more exact here, but I came anyway. And he's in the hospital having, surgery for an aneurysm. Susie might even remember this. And I was just, so upset, and I brought him. But if you look at his astrocartography, Pluto goes nowhere near Cape Cod. The Mercury line is here, but the Pluto line is actually going kind of like through Washington, D.C. and New York and New Jersey, where we kind of came from. And in fact, he lived in Washington, D.C. twice. And once was when he was in college and he was an intern for Senator John Kerry. And then the second time was just before he went to law school. He went down there. My brother-in-law lives there. And he went there and got a job with a really big law firm, just to not as a lawyer, but just sort of to test, did he want to go to law school? So he had, really good experiences on this Pluto line, and it went nowhere near Cape Cod. So I didn't have to feel too guilty. And obviously his surgery was successful, and he's a lawyer today. Mercury, Mars. So again, here, the talkative influence, these are people that'll just lay it on the line, or a place where you'll just lay it on the line and, be very forthright. It can be, a great place for public speaking or debating or writing, and at the very least, you would enjoy a lot of thought-provoking discussions and whatever. Oh, and I never changed to Mercury. There we go. Mercury, Jupiter encourages knowledge. This is a great crossing. Excuse me. A great crossing if you don't have to, if you're choosing a place for someone to go to college, which I'm often asked to do. It's really excellent for that, or for publishing, and this might be also a time to sort of bring up the idea of remote activation. Jim Lewis said, you don't have to go to the place to have the energy work for you. And that's what he called remote activation. So I can, if I want to publish a book, I might want to look where, a Mercury, Jupiter, Paran occurs, or, certainly a Jupiter line. You don't necessarily have to go to these places to experience the benefit of it. Mercury, Saturn, this is a little bit, less intense in a way. I mean, less fortunate and a little bit more intense. So it's really getting down to business, taking responsibility, concentration, practicality, being logical, and that kind of thing. Mercury, Uranus, is a good place for a mathematician, a computer person, but maybe even, the occult. It's, again, your quick thinking and original. Mercury, Neptune, again, imagination and being careful not to be deceptive, or to be the victim of deception. I recommend, always repeating back, somebody says something to you, this is what I think. And, then going back and say, here's what I heard you say, with Neptune. And yeah, Gail?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. The most recent one I thought would be pertinent right now. It's Katrina says, I don't understand remote activation. Can you say more about this?
Yeah, so, perhaps you're, born in the United States, but you have a Venus line going through Russia, and you have no ability to get to Russia, really. But you might find that you enjoy Russian literature, or, Tchaikovsky, or the love of your life who moves here from Russia and you meet here in the United States, but your Venus line goes through Russia. So we often find that, like a sun line or a Venus line might, be where your partner comes from. An example of a moon line going through Europe can be, can actually go through and this happens a lot, goes through the countries, of your family, your maternal family roots, and that kind of thing. So that's what's meant by remote activation, that you don't have to be in a place to experience whatever energy is being talked about in a place. Does that help?
Okay. That's good, thank you. And there's just two other questions which might be helpful to people understanding it. One, Lynn asked, are you using this for natal interpretation as a rule to see if the person is born in a beneficial location or relocation type of charting?
This is more about relocation.
Okay, and then
So-
one other, how much weight do you give to a paran relative to a transit?
A paran relative to a transit? Well, the paran is something that's always there. The transit comes and goes. You mean in whether or not you should go somewhere?
That's all they asked was
Yeah.
it's probably it's a paran being activated by a transit, maybe.
Right. So yeah, I mean that is something. You know, so you might. So if you have a Moon Mars crossing and Mars is getting a Pluto transit, yeah, that in a way does activate the paran. And that was something I was going to say earlier too, and it went out of my head, is that often when we are having transits, right, we'll end up doing something that brings us to the place where that energy is strong, you know. So yeah,
Right.
so those were great questions. Thank you. And now I don't remember where I am, but
You were last at Mercury Neptune is where you left off.
Mercury Neptune, right? So of course I wouldn't remember with Mercury Neptune where I am. Makes total sense. So Mercury Pluto under this. I just want to see my time because I feel like I'm taking too long with this, and I shut off my phone. Does anybody have a sense of how long I've been going on and on?
You've only been speaking a little, almost 50 minutes, between 45 and 50 minutes. So
Really? Yeah,
So-
that's too much. Okay, well, maybe not. Speaking of on and on, that's a 12-step program for Geminis who talk too much. Okay. Susie knows what I mean. So anyway, all right, a little recovery humor. So, which is also Moon Neptune, right? Drug or addictive behavior. So be careful of that when Neptune is emphasized, Mercury Neptune is emphasized. Mercury Pluto, of course, you know, like a steel trap, you grab onto something and you can't let go of it. So this is great if you're, you know, want to research something in depth, or, you know, you're working on something that requires, you know, a high degree of concentration. But, you know, if you're just, you know, stubbornly holding on to stuff, you may not be, it may not be so great. Which brings us to Venus, Mars. So it's not always about sex. Venus and Mars are blood relatives from, you know, the way I was taught. And it's anywhere that you go where, you know, you get passionate, right? You get passionate. You feel alive in a Venus Mars place. And, you know, it's also you know, it is good for romantic relations, sexual relationships. But it's also, you know, you can really be adventurous, or, you know, take things like dance or gymnastics and those kinds of things. Venus Jupiter is, you know, the fun-loving, generous, and popular. Great place to be a teacher or a travel agent, or somebody involved in public relations in general. The people you meet, you have a good camaraderie with shared philosophies and that sort of thing. Venus-Saturn is a place where you can get very serious commitment. But it's also a place where you might, end your primary relationship or your relationship suffers. Money and the pleasure of spending money could be limited there. So Venus-Saturn, we tend to hold on tightly, right? It's like that card in the tarot, the Pentacles, where he's holding on to all his pentacles with his feet and his hands. And when your hands are clenched like this, right? What can come in? Nothing. So the Venus-Saturn person has to learn, doesn't have to, but it would be good to be a little bit more aware of the flow of money. But and Venus-Saturn relationships, somebody said, when people are married for a while, it becomes, the passion dies down, and then they're like friends. And if they can't be friends, then there could be issues. But the Saturn Venus aspect of a relationship, can sometimes feel, sort of not as exciting as the next one, Venus-Uranus, or even the Venus-Jupiter or the Venus-Mars, but it can make for longevity. Venus-Uranus. So here, again, you can suddenly fall into love. Again, with Uranus, sometimes things aren't always long lasting, but it can be very exciting. And sometimes, if other things are working okay, it can be a long lasting place. But this is a great place for an exciting vacation, or to, experiment with artistic things, really, eclectic kinds of decorating, and you might find yourself doing that, those sorts of things on a Venus-Uranus line. Especially if like the Venus is rising and the Uranus is on the IC, your home might be, a collection of weird art objects. And Neptune, Venus-Neptune, is of course the romance, the idyllic love, which lasts for a while, and then it's easy to become disillusioned when you have an unrealistic view of things, so that's the danger along the Venus-Neptune line, is that you might fall in love, but with an idea as opposed to a real person. But it is a nice line, especially for people who do creative stuff. It's perfect almost. Venus-Pluto, again, intensity and drama in relationships. Jealousy and possessiveness are possible, but so is, a relationship that with passion and loyalty and commitment. Mars-Jupiter, Mars lines. I love Mars-Jupiter. I think it's, a very good, energetic kind of energy. I think it favors competition, the military, people that work in religion, and it's just a place where, you can put your all into something. It's also a place where you might, again, bite off more than you can chew. Mars Saturn, this one gets a really bad rap in astrology, doesn't it? Read what Grant Louis said about Mars Saturn, the worst, or Mars Saturn square, worst combination ever. It is a little bit like bashing your head against a brick wall in these locales. And it's one that I do tend to avoid for people, like the moon Saturn, which could be lonely. Mars Saturn can be frustrating, right? Mars is the gas pedal, Saturn's the brake. What happens when you've got both of them going at the same time? You're kind of spinning your wheels. But, if you need to, I mean, it's pretty good for, people who need. And here's the other thing, if you're somebody that has like zero self-discipline, well, going to, some kind of Saturnian line is very, can be very helpful, because it can help you to, sort of get organized and be disciplined. So, if otherwise, Mars Saturn can just, feel like you're always, bashing your head against a brick wall. Mars Uranus, accidents, anybody? I don't know, adventure. This is another one where, maybe a good line for like a race car driver. But it's important to, if you're just a normal person, avoid reckless behavior, or you might want to do, something reckless or crazy with this influence, so might be good to just be a little cautious. Mars Neptune, again, a place where it's not a great line for health, not a great line for motivation. It's not a great line for fear. Fear is false evidence appearing real, right? And with the Mars Neptune, you might have fears along those lines. And again, also addictive behavior. But some of the good things, water sports, working in a place where water is emphasized, maybe being a bartender. Mars Pluto, again, this is a line where power struggles can just go over the top. But it's a great position, for a general, for somebody who's producing. There's on my screen, it says somebody's entered the waiting room and needs to be admitted. I think I'm a co-host. I can actually do that. I did it.
Yes, thank you. There's a couple of questions.
Okay.
Let me know. There was a question about what about Venus Uranus for long-term living? That might go along with the Mars Uranus thing.
For long-term living?
Yeah. For Venus Uranus for long-term living, that'd be difficult to be on one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it might be, unless you're, so the thing about the Uranus lines, right? Like, well, often we're living with other people too. So like, here's another thing, another element to take into consideration, but if you're on a Uranus line and Venus, it's important to, sort of, claim your space and feel good about, pursuing the things that you want to do independently. Or you may find that you get involved with somebody, right, who, it doesn't always, want to do what you want to do. And so, claim your space and be able to do it without the person, getting all angry and stuff. But yeah, they're not necessarily, you might find yourself there because, so for instance, if you have, a Saturn IC line going through a place, and I always teach that, Saturn IC, those places are really difficult to leave. What happens is you get tied up with responsibility. You buy a house, you have you really put down roots, right? Saturn, 4th house, roots. So you get rooted there, but you have this, Venus Uranus thing going on. So you might stay for a long time, but again, managing, understanding that you need freedom and you need to be able to pursue, some of the interests of art or music or, whatever it is that's floating your boat. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions?
Well, you're kind of touching on that, but we don't want to. There was one about if you're looking to relocate, what line would you look to first? If you don't have a sun line in the US that suits you, what line would you look to next as the next best possible?
The first thing you should do, even it might not necessarily even be a sun line. The first thing that you should do is look for the best planet in your chart. So if you have a dignified Venus or a dignified moon or, one that's not too afflicted, right? A Venus square Saturn is a lot different than, a Venus square Jupiter. So you have to, it's not as simple as, oh, well, I'll go live on my Venus line. If you have a crappy Venus, that might not be such a great idea. So, did I say crappy? That's like usually clean for me. Anyway, so it's not that simple. So what I would say is look for what you think is the best planet in your chart. What works for you, and then try to move to activate it or accentuate it.
Right.
And I also use midpoints, being a Uranian astrologer. I don't use, and I know a lot of people do, the soft aspects to planets. So where is, Venus sextiling the moon or something, right? I don't use those aspect lines. They're available in the software, they're available in other people's software, they're, but Jim Lewis used to refer to them as the ACS ripoff maps. He had a long-standing thing about it, and he did not use the soft aspects. From his point of view and from a strict astrocartography point of view, we use, what's angular, not what might be sextiling an angle. But I do use midpoints, but that's another lecture. Okay, so I think, I think we're up to Jupiter, Saturn. Let's do some business. Good place for real estate, and banking and that kind of thing. I've never really loved Jupiter, Saturn because it's sort of like, I don't know. Maybe it's too real, but because you would have a pull, right, to expand, and then Saturn would say, no, wait. And it's just too schizophrenic or something. But but the idea is really to like learn how to balance, right? Um, Saturn is exalted in Libra, which I always found to be a little strange. Um, because but then when you think about it, Libras come into the world. They don't. A lot of them. I mean, this has been my experience. They don't always know how to balance. They learn the balance by going to extremes. The scale, boom, boom, and then the balance is learned. So anyway, Jupiter Uranus. This is really a fun line, a place where you could have sudden good luck, sudden windfalls, good place for somebody following a career in computers and that kind of thing. Jupiter Neptune. Money comes in, money goes out the other way, but it's a great line for like musicians. The singer Phoebe Snow, she had a pretty tight Jupiter Neptune aspect opposition, I'm pretty sure. I know she had a Jupiter Neptune. Oh no, she had a Mars Neptune aspect. But the Jupiter Neptune though is a lot about musical talents, arts, creativity, but it is, and it's important to stay practical. We get a lot of people coming to us for what's the word I'm looking for? Projects. And they'll say, oh, we have this great idea on, this astrological project, blah, 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 blah. We want you to do all the work and we'll give you a percentage of what we make. And, we started calling them around here Jupiter Neptune schemes. Oh, another Jupiter Neptune scheme. Somebody who's somebody from outside the field, who wants to make money on astrology, but doesn't really want to value the work of the astrologers, but that Jupiter Neptune, the pie in the sky sort of thing. So that's the danger of that line. But otherwise, it's kind of nice and happy and spiritual and musical and, a place to be inspired. Jupiter Pluto. So Jim really loved Jupiter Pluto, but then at some point, started to I think sour on it a little. But Jupiter Pluto is, technically it should be a place where you have the enthusiasm to live life like big, everything. Do it big, do it in a grand way. One of the and it's also a great place to like heal your inner child, go through your transformation. But I also find though that Jupiter Pluto requires having to let go of something so something better can take its place. And sometimes we really don't want to let go of the thing that we're letting go of. It can be difficult. Things, it can sometimes be a place where you lose something, really important. And, but, just so you can move forward and grow. Saturn, Uranus. This is a place where, you can, I think that there is a lot of ups and downs connected with this place. It's very mathematical and maybe science in some ways, but it's a little bit like being what's that, like bipolar, you know, the depths and the heights. But also you might like come into contact with people that are going to challenge your beliefs in some way. You know, so your foundation, right? Your Saturn gets challenged. Uranus, you know, trying to shake up that belief system. Saturn, Neptune. So the Saturn, Neptune is, I remember there was a conference that NCGR did way back when in Dallas, I think it was. Was it Dallas or? And it was turning your dreams into reality, maybe. It can also, and so, and you know, maybe for some people it does give structure to their spiritual beliefs or their creative goals. A lot of times though, it can go the other way and, you know, sort of be a dampening influence, or Neptune, you know, just sort of dissolves and things. I think a lot of people suffering from depression sometimes have that Saturn Neptune sort of thing. So in terms of locality, you know, again, this might be a place where you can put structure to all your Neptune stuff, or it might be a place where you find Neptune is dissolving your foundation, which it's not that great. Saturn, Pluto, another one of these wonderful combinations. So here, you know, it can run the gamut from, you know, a great leader with persistence and drive. You can, you know, really, you know, make a statement in the world, become a powerful person, have the strength to endure many challenges or experience many challenges and find yourself, you know, constantly having to climb through that wall. Uranus, Neptune, again, this is one that can feel a little bit more fun. You know, you may look at like things anew and fresh look. I remember my good friend Arlene Nymark and I were talking about the presidential election. I guess it would have been 92. And there was a Uranus-Neptune conjunction happening. And it was just a few days before the election. It was pretty clear Clinton was going to win, you know, and I was saying, you know, I thought he was, you know, a great expression of Uranus-Neptune at the time. And she was saying, yeah, but, you know, Uranus-Neptune, you know, anything can happen. Well, sort of, you know, and I said, yeah, anything already did happen. We're about to, you know, elect a pot smoking, you know, philanderer, president of the United States, which would not have, you know, been something that you would have thought about, you know, even 5 years before that would even be possible. So Uranus, Neptune, anything can happen here. And, you know, it's a great place to, you know, sort of, you know, view life differently, right? Like gain a new perspective and and an intriguing one. Uranus, Pluto. Again, now this could be a little bit more, revolutionary and upsetting, and but again, it is about change. So this is a locale. If you're a rabble rouser, like the sustainable practices lady that I mentioned on the Cape, you might go to that sort of locale to affect change in the world. Neptune, Pluto, this, most of us were born with that sextile, but it is about transformation, again, in spiritual beliefs. And again, it's a very generational sort of aspect. We look at the Neptune Pluto's generation has kind of altered the traditional societal roles and affected that change. So now I want to introduce something that we call mundane squares. And this happens to be, some of the astrocartography lines, because obviously it's not all of them, just selected lines of the wonderful guy that they were talking about earlier, my husband. And so you'll see that this is about, well, let me go to the next one and then we can always go back. So he has the sun at about 28 Aquarius and Uranus at 22 Gemini, which are planets in a trine aspect. However, at latitude 3952, the sun would be at the MC while Uranus would be rising. So even though those are trines, because they kind of become angular, right, at that particular latitude, we call that a mundane square. So in this case, and in this latitude, a trine becomes a square because it's, it's that simultaneous angularity. Mundane squares are great for doing things on. So you have, you have the trine, you have that nice sort of aspect, but then you can utilize that angularity, the emphasis of angularity. So let's go back to this, and we see that Sun Uranus going right here. It was 3952, which is, I think, really around Philadelphia. It's a little bit north of Washington, D.C. Likewise, planets in sextile can also become mundane squares. The same individual has Jupiter at 24 Sagittarius, which is sextile the sun. However, at latitude 43 north 22, the sun will be at the MC while Jupiter sets. So that 40, so the sun Jupiter is, shouldn't be there. What was it sun Jupiter? Whoops. Says 43 north 22. I'm not sure why the line doesn't appear to be there. Here's the sun Jupiter. Well, I guess that is 43. Yeah, that's up here. I think what happens is when you're looking like at a map of the world, the spaces in between seem smaller. So it didn't seem to me that that should be 43, but Yeah, I guess it is because it's north of Cape Cod and we're like 42 something. So anyway, so a little bit about how this works. We were at a conference in Philadelphia. I always tell this story because wonderful husband was a little skeptical about astrologers, to say the least. And he had a background in, you know, evangelical Christianity and stuff like that, you know. So, but, you know, he's, you know, he got to meet people like Rob Hand and Bernadette Brady and you know, and me and Gary and Lee Lehman and stuff like that pretty early on in our relationship. And so, you know, he said, wow, you know, these people are really smart. So anyway, we go to Philadelphia for a conference. This is his first astrology conference. And that's around 3952 with the sun, you know, Sun Uranus getting accentuated. And he wants to buy like all the astrology books in the bookstore, and he's going to every class. And he's like, these people are, this is so interesting. And anyway, we sit, and so that's great. I'm glad that he experienced that, right, and enjoyed it. When we had dinner, so this is the joke, okay? So we sit down for dinner, and I said to him, oh, now is when we sacrifice the chickens. And just about every, you know, all the blood, like, you know, drained from his face. He turned ghostly white. And then I said, you know, for chicken, for dinner. So anyway, when we went to some conference at around this latitude, which is also, you know, not that far from where we live either. I forget what conference it was, but he had no interest in going to classes. You know, he actually went out and did the things that he enjoys for himself, you know, hiking and bookstores and listening to music, and, you know, this whole, you know, love of astrology, you know, sort of disappeared. This is a guy that lives on the Cape, and he has a Sun-Pluto trine that becomes a mundane square here on Cape Cod. This man, he came from really humble beginnings in Roanoke, Virginia. This man has made a tremendous success of life. One of the things that he does here, Pluto IC, is he's got lots and lots of cottages that he rents out to people who come here for the summer to work. Pluto IC, and he's constantly, you know, there's like a constant turnover and, you know, taking care of the cottages. And some of them are even just not just for workers, but also people that want, you know, an inexpensive Cape Cod vacation. But he's done really well. And of course, he's got Jupiter on the IC too. But this crossing, he also owns a chain of leather goods stores on the Cape, you know, these are Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, also Martha's Vineyard. So he you know, he's made quite a success of life with the Jupiter on the IC and the Sun, Pluto, but a lot in real estate. He owns, he got here at the right time when you could buy stuff cheap. This is Gerald Ford's natal chart. And we see a, you know, again, a moon in Sagittarius, sextiling Uranus in Aquarius. Of course, he's the only president of the United States who was never actually elected by more than, a small number of people in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So let's see how this one plays out. So he's got his moon Uranus Paran with, again, these are trans-Neptunian planets, but Pluto is also on the IC. And this moon Uranus crossing, moon sets while Uranus is on the midheaven. So again, that sextile becomes what we call, a mundane square. And he had 2 assassination attempts by crazy women, moon Uranus, within orb of this this crossing. And he survived both of them. One was Squeaky Frome, Lynette Squeaky Frome, and the other was, I don't know why, in my regular PowerPoint, the notes are there, but they don't seem to come up once I go into the view. I forget the name of the other lady, anywho. And so someone had asked me about 9/11. And this is the first plane terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. And, it's like, Mercury was rising, Jupiter's over here. Sun Jupiter crossing, coming, within orb of Boston, where the planes took off from. But I mean, from the perspective of the people, the person who was flying the airplane into the World Trade Center, this was a successful action in a way, right? They accomplished, most of what they wanted to accomplish. And what's interesting about this too, so the Saturn Uranus, which is, shaking the foundations, like literally, right, of those buildings. They collapsed within themselves. But also, think about it. I mean, well, I don't know. I guess this isn't really, this might be stretching a bit, but that Saturn Uranus, the plane that left Newark Airport, which is within orb of that, even though not at that exact time. I'm not quite sure when that plane took off. That's the one that crashed in Shanksville and was not successful. So again, but this is definitely, shaking the foundations there. Now we're going to look a little bit at the Paran clock, what we call the Paran clock. And we're going to look with Kennedy's chart. We can look at, some of his Parans. I mean, he has Sun Neptune crossing. And so here's a little bit how, what the configuration is, how the Sun Neptune is actually happening, how that changes the interpretation somewhat or the experience somewhat. So in Berlin, and then of course the lines, Venus sets, what do we know about Kennedy in Berlin? He was loved, and he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner." I am a jelly donut is really what he said, but it is, you know, I'm with you, Berlin, right? The Cold War was going on, the wall had been erected, and, you know, he came and gave a speech that was sunrise, Neptune IC. So he shined, right? He got a chance to shine. The Venus was setting, and the Neptune on the IC. I merge with you, right? There is no separation. There's no boundary, and so on. And then of course Uranus also, and Uranus rise with Venus IC. Where's that? Well, apparently that's going on, but it's not marked because I took that line off. Just to, like, if you have too much stuff, then people can't read it. But you could trust me, Uranus was rising and Venus was on the IC. So again, you know, Uranus rising, he gets, you know, he gets to like make a breakthrough, right? He gets attention to the wall. Venus IC, you know, I'm in your homeland, I'm with you. Contrast that with Neptune setting and Sun on the IC, with Mars IC in Moscow. So presidents, often where their Mars lines go, that's where they have conflict. It happens a lot. So Mars IC, you know, the you know, Khrushchev saying, we will bury you. And Neptune setting, he's misunderstood there. They don't understand each other. And Sun on the IC, what's misunderstood in some ways, it's, you know, our culture, our way of life, or he's misunderstanding theirs. He's not seeing their vision for their homeland at all. In Dallas, which is right here, he has a Mars rise and Neptune on the IC, this line. And it says, in some cases, you may even become the victim of someone else's crime. Well, I guess we know that. And of course, he has Pluto on the MC. Now, Jim, in his astrocartography book of maps with Ariel Gutman, which is just that, it's a book of maps, he rectifies Kennedy's chart so that Pluto goes right through there, but I don't do that. And that Pluto line is still within orb. And I had found another thing with local space lines. So Venus rules Kennedy's 8th house, and his Venus local space line goes right through Dallas. And then the guys on the airplane, you know, the day the music died, Buddy Holly and the La Bamba guy, I just can't remember his name right this second. They both had their ruler of the 8th house, local space line, going through the place where the plane crashed. Now, I'm not saying that everybody who has a local space line going through a particular place, that's where they're going to die at all, but sometimes it happens. So here is a timeline of the assassination. So I'm going to be flipping back and forth. It's the only way I can figure out how to do it. But we can, you know, it's here. We can see that the kind of stuff that was going on. He left for Dallas, he landed, people met them and loved them and welcomed them. And Air Force 2 is the Johnson's plane that, so I guess it goes like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they get off, they're greeted, and the motorcade leaves for the trip into Dallas, leaves the airport. And, you know, the president is shot, they race to the hospital, the policeman stops Oswald, and so on and so forth. So why and these are the doctors. Okay, so why am I doing this? So this is what's called a paran clock. It's very different, so to say the least. And the first thing that happens is you do use the relocated chart of the person, because, you know, as we saw with our latitude lines, right? They're location specific. The angularity is location specific. This is another way to look at a paran. What this is saying is when the sun is on the IC, Uranus is rising. Well, that sure says a lot. This is saying that, so that's a paran, right? This is saying when Venus is on the IC, the moon is westing or setting, right? Just at this point right here, Pluto is on the IC all by itself. We can, and this changes over the course of the day in terms of what time these things occur. That's why it's a clock. I had one of these by hand that I used to move a long time ago, that Arthur Blackwell, who was one of the original partners of Astrolabe, made for me. And, you know, every time Saturn was angular, my ex-husband appeared. But he was my husband at the time. But if I wanted to know when he was going to come in from his office, you know, I just looked for when Saturn's going to come walking through the door, you know, sort of thing. Anyway, this is very useful, you know, for you as an individual. You know, what time am I going to make a phone call today? Well, maybe when Venus is setting, you know, and I'll get a nice response from somebody, or, you know, when the sun is on the midheaven and I can project myself and all sorts of good things. So let's just go back. Let's look at the sun on the IC with the Uranus rising combination, which was at around 1245. And so where's 1245? 1245. So, well, the president is shot at 1230. You know, so here maybe is a case for rectifying Kennedy's chart a little bit. But 1233, 1236, I don't see anything at exactly 1245 unless, yeah. He's on his way to the hospital at that point. So, and then at 1:30ish, we've got the Venus on the IC and the moon setting. And at 1:07, the news of the shooting causes stock exchange to halt trading, and that's exactly at 1:07. Millions flood of sell orders. So again, I think that there's a lot about this where we might again rectify his chart a little bit to just move that a smidge more that way. And then we have, whoops, oh, this is, no, it's not going. Oh, there we go. So now we have, we added in the transits. And we have something that's nearly impossible to read, as you can see. So we're still working on collision avoidance, but we can see that this transiting moon rising, transiting Saturn rising, and the sun transiting the midheaven are all occurring right around that 12:30 time. And at the 12:45 time where he's got the sun Uranus, we also have the Mercury from the midheaven, which is, you know, kind of interesting considering that he got shot from a book depository, right? So, and then at the time that announcements were made, you know, and people started to become aware, you know, we have Venus transiting the midheaven, Uranus westing, and a lot of other things going on. And also, when we go back for a little bit, this is, you know, this is what was going on before. You know, this is like, I think it said something like 1140 something. Well, that's when Jupiter was on the IC, and people were so happy to see him, and you know, Mercury on the IC, and that kind of thing. So now this is OJ and Nicole. I'm going to stop for a minute and ask if there are questions, Gail.
Okay, there's a couple.
Because I see a lot of things in chat.
Yeah, Elke asked, I forgot to ask at the beginning, but what does in mundo mean, please?
What does in mundo mean? Is that
In mundo?
in mundo? Yeah, so it means like in right ascension, kind of, as
Okay.
opposed to like zodiacal.
And somebody's wondering about this clock. Where could you find this tool? I think you said before we started, it's in Nova something.
Nova chart wheels, yeah. So I don't know if I said this already, but for anyone who attended today, or even if you want to tell your friends, you know, we're not going to monitor it too closely, but I did create a discount code so that if you wanted to buy Nova chart wheels or SolarFire or any software that we sell, the Astrolabe report system, and you use the discount code, capital letters, TAG, tag 20, and you would get a 20% discount on your purchase.
That's wonderful,
so
because
the program is Nova
because
chart.
someone, yeah, that's wonderful, because this isn't the kind of thing you can find on AstroDienst. You can't ask them to erect your Paran
No.
clock or something. No,
No,
have
you
to
know,
get
and in some ways, I would love to figure out how we can turn this into an app, you know, because I think this is, you know, very useful, you know, in life. You know, I'm gonna, you know, I mean, you can always, you know, throw up a chart or whatever, but you know, if you just had the clock in front of you, you could see, you know, what time is the best time for me to, you know, go ask this nice young woman for a date, or, you know, go tell my husband I'm leaving him, or, you know, something like that, without him going crazy.
And so again, people, they would have to go to astrolabe.com to find and order one of these programs.
It's actually alabe.com.
Alabe, yeah.
ALABE. Unfortunately, somebody had astrolabe.com, and we were just a little too late to the party. So we're Alabe, A-L-A, B as in boy, E. Or you call the office 1-800-THE-NOVA or 843-6682 and give them the discount code. And
Great.
I see it's almost like, it's like 5 after 6, but let's just quickly go through the wonderful timeline. And we see that in Nicole Brown Simpson, who was born in Germany, had going through LA, a Jupiter Pluto, and and she did pretty well there for a little while, but also a moon Mars, and probably within orb of this Uranus, Neptune, and Sun Pluto thing going on, where her husband was from in Northern California. She had a Mars Neptune crossing there. So, that's kind of like that idea of remote activation, right? She wasn't living in San Francisco, but that's where he was from. And then Neptune, Neptune rising. And so here's her Paran clock. So we can see at 6 for the day. So this will say like May 18th, 19th. That's the person's birth information. What you're not seeing is in Nova Chart Wheels, there's another box that we call the working data box. And in the working data box, the the transits are set for the day that of the shooting. So even though these aren't transits, but we know what day we're talking about, because again, this will change day by day. So on this day at around 6:15, Saturn was on the IC, and at 6:30, the moon was easting and Venus was on the midheaven. But, the next day it would be, a little bit further on. So let's see what was happening at 6 whatever p.m. 6:30 p.m. Nicole Brown Simpson, her children and several others go to dinner at the Mezzaluna restaurant. So that's pretty much moon easting Venus midheaven. I'm going out with my family to have dinner at a nice restaurant. Just before that, the way the story is told, OJ had asked if he could come along. They were at a dance recital of their daughter, and the family's going out, and he wants to come too. And she sets a boundary, right? Saturn sets boundaries. She says, no, you can't come. So we go back, we go back this way, see what happens next. Around 7:30, Mars is on the midheaven, and well, really nothing happens. Something happened in the restaurant that we don't know, but nothing important in the timeline. And then at around 8:30, we see Neptune rising. And at 8:30, again, we don't have anything specific, but 9 o'clock, well, at 8, that would be like 8:50, 10 of 9, Uranus on the midheaven, and Mercury setting. So that would be between 9 p.m. and 9:30. That's something OJ did. 9:15, one of Nicole's sisters calls Mezzaluna to say that Nicole's mother had left her glasses. 9:50, Goldman leaves with the glasses, and then at 10:15 p.m., while watching television, the neighbor hears the cries of the constant barking of the dog. And we can see that happening. So this is 11 o'clock, and here's 10, and we see that right around the time that the dog was barking, we have Jupiter rising, Pluto on the midheaven, and the sun westing. And those are basically, you know, this is the Pluto, right? And the Jupiter and the sun. Those are the kinds of, and the Neptune. Oh, Neptune's not there, but Jupiter, Pluto, and the sun. Those are the kinds of energies that, you know, she sort of has angular in that area anyway. And this is with the transits. And, you know, if anybody wants a PDF of this PowerPoint, should I just send it to you, Gail, and you can handle that, or send it out to them when they get their video link?
Yes, yes, I can do that. So yes, please just send it.
Yeah, so you can kind of, you know, look at the timeline and then look at the what do you call these? The clock. Look at the clock. You know, just this one's important, right? Pluto transiting the ascendant or easting at around 9:50 or so. And what does it say? That's when Goldman left the restaurant with the glasses. And then, of course, this is the same thing for OJ. You know, just before. So if you remember, at the 6:30 was when Nicole and the family went to eat, and just before then he had asked to go, and he got slammed with Mars Pluto. So Mars was on the IC and Pluto was setting. So he got angry and jealous, right, of his partner, his former wife, excluding him. And then we have it around the time of the murder, Jupiter setting, or the purported time of the murder, and you know, Saturn near the IC somewhere later. And these are with the transits, you know, so here's that the Saturn again, and what do you say? Yeah, so Mars and Neptune and Mercury and all sorts of stuff. So that is the end of my PowerPoint. And I don't know if there are any more questions.
Yes, questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to ask the whole group a question as well as you, Madalyn.
You wanted to what?
Can you hear me?
Katrina
So
wants to ask.
I heard you, but I didn't quite make out what you said because.
I'd like to ask a question, but I'd like to get feedback from the whole group as well as you.
Okay.
If anybody has feedback. I'm curious about the 2-degree orb. I've spent a whole lot of time and money doing ACG about and moving and going to visit places and trying to feel experience actually the different planetary energies and the different places I've gone to. And I know that some people, you know, like on astro.com, which is the only thing I can use because it's free and that's what I use, they say a 2-degree orb for the Parans. But some people say that's, you know, if you have a bunch of challenging Parans, like on my chart, there's hardly anywhere I can go. And so how much does it depend on like what the other planetary, like if I have a whole lot of strong Pluto energy in my chart, then maybe the Pluto Paran orb might be bigger? Or how do you, in your personal experience, how have you found the orb, the distance to be relevant in someone's life and where they live? Am I making sense? Is that question clear to people?
Yeah, and, you know, in my opinion, I actually go tighter orbs.
So does that mean less, like maybe 1 degree?
Yeah, one degree, degree and a half, but I'd be curious to hear what other people think.
Personal experience, anybody?
Okay. Hello, Madalyn. This is like a class reunion. We were in the same class together 30 years ago, and this is
Hi,
Dale
Dale.
and Brian. And also the great work you do for Kepler with ACG. They call me in to talk about, Karen McCauley calls me in to talk about Chiron and the asteroids and Black Moon Lilith in ACG. And so we've been at it about the same time. And I agree with you. I usually narrow the orb two degrees north or south is the max. But a lot depends on how busy how many lines there are. If there's only one paran nearby, then, you know, I might even stretch it out to 2.5. But it's basically depends on the circumstances of the individual chart.
Yeah, I agree with Dale.
Okay, thank you.
And it's great to see you. I'm like actually kind of honored that you're here.
I just had to find out about the Paran clock. I mean, you know, I would have shown up just for that alone. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question. I'd like, again, opinions from other people. When you went through all your planetary combos, you didn't mention Pluto Paran with North Node, which I have, and it covers, if I do the whole 2-degree distance, it covers a broad spectrum of where I might want to relocate to. So I'm wondering what people think about Pluto North Node. I've had some magical group experience there, and I've had some horrible experiences there, but it's also during the time of my Rahu Dasha, and while Pluto was transiting almost all my planets. So it's hard for me to tell which is the Pluto North Node influence relative to those other factors. So I'm just curious what people think.
That's part of the problem. And I mean, I did see your email about that. I couldn't read your maps because I couldn't read them. I don't buy into the Venus sextile ascendant that you mentioned because I already said that. I think that's meaningless. I mean, it's not meaningless, but it's not astrocartography. So the node, I mean, are you using true node or moon node, mean node? Pluto node is to share powerful experiences with other people. And I don't want to take the time now because we're long and whatever, but I'll write you an email because I
thought I might have a consult with you, Madalyn, actually. So
well, that's, you know, that's up to you. But I threw some midpoints up on your map, and you know, I just have some questions. Did you ever live here? Did you ever live there? But anyway, I think that change the node that you're using. No, I'm just kidding.
Does anybody else have?
What do you think, Dale?
I think one thing that of course you know is Madalyn, is consciousness makes a big difference in astrocartography. So a lot of this is going to be tremendously different depending on a person's consciousness and the Pluto's natal and transiting placements in the chart. So it's a depends sort of story.
Thanks for letting me ask, you guys.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I've got a comment. Can I jump
Sure.
in?
Yeah.
I've got my astrocartography map here, from Solar Fire. And so when you were talking, I did my lines across, and a couple of comments. One is, I have a lot of my parans in the middle of the ocean are in, Timbuktu, So
Yeah.
it was interesting to kind of see, oh, look at that one. Oh, well, that's in the middle of an ocean somewhere, So that was interesting, even though I do astrocartography all the time for my clients. I really didn't really focus on this latitude. And so at any rate, I really enjoyed I'm understanding astrocartography more with you, and I knew I would. But one thing it was interesting is that a couple of years ago, I moved to Barcelona for a while, and I've got Sun Uranus rising, and on my IC is Saturn. And so then I did the cross over the latitude. And what I found out is that Barcelona is 41 north 38, Cape Cod is 41 north 66, right? So where do I really learn, at least the software was my Sun Uranus and Cape Cod, So at any rate, I just thought that was fascinating. That was one of my nicer lines going across, and it connects Barcelona, which I love, and Cape Cod, which I love, and kind of astrology in both areas. So at any rate, I really enjoyed, doing this. So I followed it all along, with my map. So at any rate, I want to encourage people to do that, because it really made it more, it sunk in better than just listening to what you had to say. And that's it. That Barcelona and Cape Cod are connected. How cool is that? Huh?
That's very cool. I want to go to Barcelona. That's like, I had wanted to go this year actually, but I'm not because of COVID.
It wasn't a year for it. I'm so glad I was there and lived there before all of this came up. Yeah. So at any rate,
I did want to say though, the crossings are great, but they're not the only thing. Like they're to help you figure out along, a longitude line or whatever, another type, an angular planet line, like where on the line you might go, right? So if you have Jupiter on the midheaven, and then you want to look for the best crossing along that line. And then you have to deal with people who really don't want to move, but they think they do, right?
Yeah. So any rate, that was it. I really enjoyed it, Madalyn, so much. Got to be getting late for you.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
I just want to say hello.
I'm trying to get rid of this Brewster, this thing that comes up that Microsoft keeps imposing on me every time my mouse goes down to the bottom of the screen. Let me leave it over here. There we go.
Hello.
I have a question that's more specific about the interpretation of the lines.
Yeah.
I understand how whenever there's a crossing of like a rising setting line and then the vertical line ICMC, at the point that they cross, then that latitude is the paran, and anywhere along that line of latitude, you'll get the effect of the crossing. But my question is, if it happens that the actual crossing is right at a spot, who knows where, Omaha, Nebraska, or Osaka, Japan, or something, does that emphasize very strongly right at that point, more so than the entire line of latitude? You might be 1,000 miles away, but right on that paran. Is it more emphasized?
Yes, because what's happening there is that you also have those planets angular there, right? So you have both the paran influence, and I have experience with somebody who, went to live on her Venus Jupiter crossing, She knows a little bit about astrology, and you know, she used to live here on the Cape. Actually, I think she ended up coming back. But you know, she's come like when we had guest speakers here and whatever, back when Gary and I had energy. And she moved to her Venus-Jupiter crossing, which was great because like right away she found people that she liked, and she she was a bird watcher, and you know, joined a group, and you know, everything was just hunky-dory, but she couldn't find a job. Anyway, you know, that utilized her skills. Kathleen, you had a question.
No, I'm just saying hello to you. I'm from NCGR and you're from Borough Park. Right?
I'm from where?
Brooklyn, Borough Park.
No, not really Borough Park, but I am from Brooklyn.
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yeah.
Well, we had a conversation. We were kind of friendly at a couple of the conferences in UAC and of course, New York NCGR.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I lived, I knew Borough Park. I lived more of the Midwood section. Bernie Sanders, yeah, Bernie Sanders land is where I lived, and in New Jersey.
Some conversation about Italian food and Brooklyn at one time.
Italian food. Yes, Borough Park was where I found a great restaurant. Yeah.
I had just a quick question about when the North Node just runs through certain towns and countries in a person's chart. I have a book, I think it was written by Jim Lewis, that didn't cover the North Node. So I just had a question about that, please.
Yeah, there's not a lot about the node and the astrocartography, but I would say that there is a, you know, somewhat of a fated connection, or like a, you know, in Uranian, which is, you know, my other thing, all the node means is connection, and then it's who you are, and then it's modified by, you know, Venus, so a love connection, you know, Mars, a work connection, Jupiter, a money connection. So yeah, but I mean, I think there's like a certain amount of destiny. One thing that I noticed, I do a chart of all the presidents, starting with Kennedy, and a lot of them, even though I said Mars is where they have wars, they really make stupid mistakes on the places where the South Node is on the midheaven. Not the North Node so much, but the South Node is on the midheaven, and the IC has the North Node. And they really do dumb things.
That's really
Get embroiled in crap that they, you know, that they shouldn't. That's been like one observation. But then again, you know, mean, true, whatever. So.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, Susie.
Do you use the mean node or true node, Madalyn? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so mostly I use the mean node.
So do I. I was just curious. Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. There might be charts in my collection using the true. You know, I think Rob says the true node is no more true than the mean node is nasty.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. So. All right.
Well, do we have any more questions? Anybody? I seen people that had to check out early. They were very appreciative of your lecture today, Madalyn. Great stuff, really new stuff. You brought us some really new information, and we just, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to, you know, see old friends and make new friends, and to speak for your group. And maybe one day when life gets back to normal, I'll actually come to Tucson. So,
That would be great.
yeah,
Just
my
let us
friend
know.
Sherry, Coelho, I think who used to come to some of your lectures, lived there for a while and now she's back on the Cape, but so I get to
Yeah.
see her a lot, but I'll let her know that I finally got to speak for you guys.
Oh, yes, do say hi to Sherry for
Yes.
me.
I will.
A long
I
time.
will.
Maybe we can get to a lecture, have you give a lecture in January or February when the weather will be as it is in the Cape, but the weather in Tucson will be, beautiful, sunshiny, 60-degree days.
Well, that sounds really good for January or
Maybe-
February 2023.
In maybe by 23, maybe 2023, we'll be more sure of being able
Yeah.
to do something.
Although isn't
Like-
Zoom great?
It
Uh-huh,
is.
yeah.
From all over the world. I go to a lot of recovery meetings, like Al-Anon and stuff like that. And we meet on Zoom and, we have people that, maybe winter, like summer here and winter in Florida, but they've been, meeting us on Zoom and it's just, fantastic, really.
Hopefully ESAR will happen in August of 2022. That's the one that's going to be in Denver, outside of Denver in Boulder. So if things are kind of back to semi-normal, maybe, we can see each
I
other
can
there.
drive down.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the next real world event. Hopefully that's going to be happening. I'm crossing my fingers for that.
Definitely.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And I'm seeing all these lovely remarks in the chat. Really, thank you.
Thank
It's-
you.
It's been
Yes.
a great experience and
Very good.
I will-
Awesome.
Great.
yeah, everybody stay
Thank you.
well
Happy-
and healthy.
You too.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, dear.
Bye.
Bye, Madalyn.
Thanks. Thank you.